Yeah. I literally just heard the lyric on here. That's funny. It is getting late. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I should have done this a long time ago, but I didn't come across this until now. So, yeah. This is what I wanted to listen to.
This notion that we're entering what we would call the beginnings of an internet of value. So obviously we've had an internet of data for the last 20 years. It's fundamentally changed our world, certainly changed everything that we've been a part of here. I think equally as exciting is what we're about to enter. This is in some ways, it's like we were talking earlier, this is like 1994 in terms of the beginning of this new internet, but an internet for moving value, not just data. And they're two completely different things. And so I'll spend some time talking about what that means. I'll show you a little bit about what we're working on specifically. And then I'd like to point out a couple of kind of fundamental things that are kind of resulting from that. So as mentioned, I've been involved the last 20 years now in 3 fintech ventures, beginning with eLoan back in the first .com wave. Then we also did Prosper and Ripple. That's been, a lot of ups and downs along the way, but really a fascinating time. But I would say nothing compared to what we're journeying into now. All these fintech companies we've seen so far were built in sort of a pre-Internet of Value world, and now we're entering this sort of post-Internet.
Now they're building.
So I think what we're going to see is
that world. This is going to be nuts.
Explosion of new businesses that pop
up. This
up
just comes after watching.
I think that's exactly what we're going to see in fintech. So
let me see if I can find it.
We haven't seen anything yet compared to what's coming. And
maybe
so the first 2 companies we were involved with were consumer. We were trying to.
After I just watched.
We're much more interested now in building that infrastructure that's going to enable this Internet of Value. We'll talk a little bit about what that means with Ripple. And sometimes it seems
there's like two hours and 45 minutes or something.
Actually, given what we're about to enter. So this
very worth it to go see it.
I think there is
very worth
a lot of parallels on how the Internet of Data.
And that is from Chris, I believe, from
we can learn from, and we're going to
across the pond.
There's also some things that are fundamentally different between an Internet of Value and an Internet of Data. And one of them, this is kind of a quote you guys may have seen from our friend Mark Andreessen, who's a wonderful guy. I love Mark to death. But you may have seen this. He talks about, hey, software is going to eat the world. And it's talked about like, gee, that must be a good thing. We're going to, the world's going to be eaten. Everybody's going to be disrupted. Awesome. This is actually one of the things I think that really has to change when we're talking about an Internet of Value. This sort of very chest-pounding sort of disruption is a great thing all the time. This is sort of an occupational hazard of living out here. Sometimes I joke, this is the kind of thing you say when you're drunk and not wearing pants, but really, this is just not a constructive way of building companies, and I hope we can all kind
he
of
has
learn
a
from
point,
that
but it is nice
and
to think
change
like
up,
that.
because when we talk about fintech, we need a big tent for fintech. When you look at what has to happen here, there are so many different types of people, so many different domains that have to work together here, or we're going to have no impact. So the entrepreneurs need to work with the regulators, the consumer groups, and most importantly, we have to work with the banks, particularly in these early days of this Internet of Value. The banks are the networks of value on Earth today. There's just it's equivalent to the way we all had to get libraries and universities and research institutes. They were the custodians of data. We needed to connect them first before you could get a functioning internet. And that's kind of exactly what we need to do with this Internet of Value. We've got to get the existing networks of value, the owners of those networks, working together so we can build that foundation. So that needs more diplomacy than it does disruption. If we're going to have impact, we all have to sort of work together. So we like to think of businesses today, startup todays, try to think yourselves as builders, not disruptors. And I think that's particularly important.
Yes.
in the world that we're going into. So I think it's actually a bright
This makes a
future.
lot of
That's why
sense
we show
because
this.
I definitely
But
want
the
to
Internet of Value,
help
I think, is more than just
build
laying
and
out
have
kind of
people learn
a new way
things.
of doing finance. I think fundamentally this represents the final step in globalization. And we're at a very interesting time right now with globalization. The world has never been more interconnected, more dependent on each other. We have got to work together as one world. It's also never been sort of more divided, and there's never been more disillusionment around what globalization means. And I think that's fair. People should be disillusioned with globalization, but not because it's a bad idea. It's more, it's a work in progress. It's incomplete.
Wait, what?
There is something missing with globalization. And we like to use the analogy of fire. You cannot have fire without fuel, oxygen, and heat. And I think the same thing applies with
Interesting.
globalization. Globalization does not work unless you have interoperability between three things: data, goods, and money. And the truth is, we only have interoperability in two of those things. Goods and data are fully interoperable around the world. Money is not.
I'll be back.
It was extremely labor
Sorry.
intensive. Goods would show up in a
I had
port.
to go buy something.
They had to be unpacked. They had to be
Look at this.
repacked. This was an incredible sort of friction point or burden.
Yeah, it was my Abra
global
app.
trade. And then along
Look at
comes
this.
a very, very simple innovation, a very simple technology, nothing super complicated, very, very basic, low level, called the shipping container in about the 50s. And that fundamentally changed the way goods and shipping worked. In the next 20 years, you had about a 700% increase in global trade. And why is that? It's because now goods were completely interoperable around the world. You could go from ship to train to truck without having to touch anything. Every port in the world was interoperable. You didn't need bilateral agreements to ship goods.
Sorry, Chris, you're in the way.
Shipping companies were interoperable. So I got to fundamentally change the way goods work. Goods are now globalized. We all know what happened with data. Before the World Wide Web, it was incredibly expensive to communicate or send data cross network. So that was a huge point of friction on how the world communicated. Obviously, with the World Wide Web now, 3 billion people can communicate without being on the same network. That's really the key point there. We have a network of networks when it comes to data and communications. Fundamentally changed the way communications work. But that's not the case with money. Money is sort of that missing ingredient. With money today, the world spends about $2 trillion a year just to move value between networks or cross-border. And even spending that much money, value transfer, single digit. We in tech world, you talk about 5 non-reliabilities, that's expected. When it comes to cross-border transfers of value, you're talking 1 9. So that is incredibly expensive for the world. This is a huge burden. And again, that's why globalization is probably not working for most people. And it's why, if you look at how this is all working today, even a wealthy European can't send, even 50 euros cross-border without it all being chewed up in fees, let alone the people in developing markets that, according to the Gates Foundation, they need to be able to send 50 cents cross-border if they're really going to be full economic citizens. That's impacting about 2 billion people in the world. Let alone this sort of emerging Internet of Things, where what we're going to be seeing is by 2020, 50 billion devices that are not just going to be exchanging data, but are actually going to be exchanging value, just like all your devices sitting here right now are exchanging data. As we sit here, that's what we should expect with machine-to-machine payments. I would argue machine-to-machine payments will actually dominate value transfer on Earth if we get the right infrastructure. But that can't happen today, right? This needs the ability to send 1/100th of a penny, 1,000th of a euro, and you just can't do that cross-border in today's world. Okay, but there is light on the horizon here. We have new technologies that are showing great promise, and obviously one of the big themes, and I know you guys talk about this a lot, and this is in the press every single day, and I don't know if it's the most overhyped category of technology, but it's probably a contender. Blockchain technologies, obviously a fascinating technology. It is ingenious. It's a game changer for sure. And what is it? It's a novel way of recording transactions that makes them immutable. These are basically distributed or decentralized databases where multiple copies of that database are kept all over the world. No one party that uses the database can change the database unless you have consensus with all the other people that are using it. Definitely very novel, very interesting, will have some applications. However, at the end of the day, a blockchain is nothing more than another network. So it does not solve this problem of interoperability or this need to have a network of networks for value. In fact, it's just adding to the burden of that need, right? These are just additional networks. They'll need to be interoperable. Bitcoin will need to be interoperable with Venmo or with HSBC's core ledgers. That problem cannot be solved by blockchains. And we think this is the critical need in fintech, because again, this will set a new platform for this, Cambrian explosion of new startups. So while blockchain is not the answer, we do think it has set off
That's a nice
kind of
bowl.
an unstoppable movement. It's attracted so much attention, brain power, and capital, and now you're seeing kind of second generation applications of not just blockchain, but I think more broadly what you'd call distributed financial technologies. One of the ones we're most excited about that we do think can solve this interoperability problem or become the sort of network of networks is something called the Interledger Protocol, or ILP. And we think that can solve that problem of enable sort of a network of networks to allow value to be instantly transferred between
that's certainly something to break the trend line.
Multiple hop networks, just the way the internet has fundamentally changed data. And I'll talk about this a little bit further. But we think this is really the game changer that brings us to that sort of idea of a grand network of networks where you have goods, data, and money all interoperable globally. And I think now we're off
if this
to the races
closes
on making globalization
above 33,
work, and including those 2 billion people that are now kind of off the grid. They now
off to the races. So I think what I should do
are full citizens in the global economy, and that those devices actually become full economic actors as well. So you now can have
once it gets
devices
to
that are buying, selling, paying taxes. This will have all kinds of implications. You could argue that Japan will be the most
31, 32.
country on earth in terms of economic actors. They probably are building most
not
of the
giving you
devices.
financial advice.
Exchanging value, that really changes the game on how the world's going to work. So again, we think this is all about then head down. Let's start building. Let's kind of knock off all the disruption talk that is really actually holding things back. I would argue that some of the early Bitcoin discussions around, hey, we're going to kill the banks and we're going to take everything over, have been a major setback in this sort of fintech wave, and we need to get off this kind of adolescent, chest-pounding, arrogant, Trump-like attitude about how innovation works. So we got to get down to building. With that, then
Trump-like attitude. I think you could have done without that, Chris. But I pick up what you're putting down.
With audio,
have you posted this?
What we're trying to do. I should point out, though, that again, this is aimed at banks. Again, we think creating interoperability between banks is the key step in how we create this Internet of Value. Again, we were talking earlier. This is like 1994 all over again. And we're really just laying the infrastructure. So we got to get the banks on board. This is to a bank audience, so there'll be some weird terminology in here. And it's also specifically cross-border or cross-network. Cross-border, cross-network, really kind of the same ideas. So here we go, and then I'll go from here. Hopefully this will work. Yeah.
How Ripple works. Let's look at the inner workings of Ripple's solution and how it improves cross-border payments. In this example, 2 banks use a correspondent bank to route their payments. The Ripple solution includes Ripple Connect, which is used to coordinate information exchange between the banks. And the ILP ledger uses the Interledger Protocol to coordinate funds movement between institutions to settle the payment. The solution ingests existing message formats like SwiftFin, or ISO 20022 through a translation layer such as CGI's Intelligent Gateway or Volante's Volpay. Let's follow one payment through the entire payment flow. First, the translation layer parses the message and collects necessary information to initiate the payment. Here you see that Alice in the US wants to send money to Bob in Germany. She wants Bob to receive 500 euros. Ripple Connect communicates with the correspondent and beneficiary banks to obtain their payment processing fees and total cost. Next, pre-transaction validation takes place. This includes compliance screening and account verification checks. Since all banks have the necessary facts, they can pre-validate the payment even before funds move to ensure high straight-through processing rates. Now it's time to coordinate funds flow across the private ILP ledgers of these three different institutions. In this example, the originating bank has a Nostro account with the correspondent bank, and the beneficiary bank is using a third-party liquidity provider to connect in with the correspondent bank. To begin the settlement process, Ripple coordinates a hold on the funds across all three ledgers. The ILP ledgers generate cryptographic signatures to verify that the funds are committed to the transaction. Then, the funds are simultaneously released across the three ledgers. This process ensures no settlement risk. The payment either executes or fails. Upon completion, Ripple provides a confirmation message to all counterparties. The entire payment process across multiple banks takes seconds and provides end-to-end visibility into the transaction while increasing processing rates and lowering operational costs. Join the global real-time settlement network today at ripple.com/contact.
Okay, so obviously there's a lot of very specific bank-like, language there, but this is aimed specifically at sort of the transaction banking parts of banks, the part of the bank that would be involved in cross-border payment and settlement. I would argue, again, that's the biggest pain point, a huge problem, multiple billions of dollars that are spent that needs to be solved, and we think, again, quote-unquote, blockchain technology will have the biggest impact initially. Let me kind of distill down a couple of points here, though, that I think are most important. So what's really going on there? One of the big changes that's going to occur with this Internet of Value is that value transfer across networks is going to move from being a sequential process, like it is today, which is a huge problem, to becoming more of a coordinated, synchronized process. So a sequential process is just that. We've probably all seen this when you're trying to send money overseas from your bank. It's left your bank account, but you're calling your recipient, and it's like days go by and they don't have it. Like, where is it? Well, your bank probably doesn't even know, because it's gone from their ledger or their network to some intermediate ledger to some other intermediate ledger that they may not even know about. And this could be literally 4 or 5 hops. And so why is that a problem? Obviously, that's a huge time delay. Time is money. More importantly, though, that is settlement risk. So there are too many states that can happen there. It could either go, it could not go, or it could be somewhere stuck in the middle.
Who makes their living doing things right. We do it right too, with products you count on in stock. With Pro Desk Managers, Pro Parking, and dedicated loaders, so you can get more done right. Do it right for less. Start with Lowe's.
This creates an even final coat and prevents unsightly spots. Now get to Alex Larson. Listen.
So that settlement risk just drives up costs, and then that makes small payments that you might need.
Sorry, I'm moving my
devices, or just from everybody.
station to the laptop. And I just caught Chris.
We turn that into a coordinated, synchronized approach, so that no matter how many hops are involved, no matter how many nodes have to be hit, we're all cryptographically being verified at the same time. So there is no settlement risk. There's only 2 states that can happen in that kind of a model. It's called an atomic transaction. It either goes or it doesn't go. Atomic is kind of the key word there, and that's sort of the way the internet works, if you will. The other kind of big thing that's changing, of course, is that we're modeling this after the architecture of the internet. And you think about what does the internet really mean? It's internetworking. That just simply means you have the ability for networks to communicate with each other. So the network of networks. And that's a very different model than what you have today. If you look at the way the internet architecture works, at the bottom you have, whatever network it is, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, whatever. And at the top you have whatever application is trying to be used, right? So the key thing is any application can be used on any network. How does that happen? It's because in the middle you've got, obviously IP and some transfer layers, but most importantly you have this internet protocol which allows that. And that's what you're doing now to money. So when we talk about ledgers are really just
That's crazy.
Networks, right? So the idea here
You're
is
doing
whatever
it to
the ledger
money.
is, and here I just have 3 examples of distributed ledgers, but that could
Seriously.
be HSBC's ledger, Citibank's ledger, Venmo's ledger. Everybody, any payment company has a ledger that holds state, and then of course any application should be able to run.
33.
That's not the way it works today. Every application
Boom,
needs to be built
boom,
on
dynamite.
every single network independently and differently, and that's a huge problem. So ILP,
Wow.
the Interledger Protocol, is analogous to IP, Internet Protocol. And again, what you're really trying to do is, if I want to send you an email, I don't have to ask you, well, are you on Verizon, or are you at AT&T, or who's your provider? I just give you your
1, 2, 3.
address, and I can send it
Freaking
anywhere in the world.
4 hours ago.
That's not the way it works with money. If you say, hey, send me $10, well, are you on Venmo, or are you on PayPal, or on Visa? So that's what you're trying to solve fundamentally. And again, Venmo does not interoperate. It's great, but it doesn't interoperate with other networks like 10Pay, for example. So this is the problem we're really trying to solve, and this is really fundamentally what changes. And what's interesting here is I think the way companies compete is going to fundamentally change like it did with the internet. If you look at payment companies today, what do they advertise? They advertise reach. So Visa, they're everywhere you want to be. Well, actually, they're only in cover about 15% of the world, right? It's not.
Oh, snap.
But that's what everybody's competing on, and that is used to be the way information networks
Look at that.
worked as well. If you look at some of the old advertisements, nobody in this room remembers this company, right? CompuServe. What do they use to advertise? We've got the most members. We're the biggest.
The
services.
XRP BTC chart
and
is
obviously the internet
reaching its lower level
reach. So now
resistance.
whether you're a big company or a small company, everybody has the same reach.
Interesting.
So that means you compete on other things. If you look at the communication companies today, they don't mention reach. What they mention is speed or service, or most importantly, price, ease of use. This is super, super important when it comes to serving the underbanked, for example. In many countries around the world, you might have a single payment provider. They're the only ones with reach in that market. And because of that, they can be sloppy on everything else. So they can be super expensive, terrible service, and this is really holding back the world. Once reach is commoditized through, of course, IP and data, and ILP and value, now whatever market in the world now has the entire world's companies competing because everybody has the same reach. That's a big deal. And of course, talk about Venmo, 10Pay. Of course, Venmo and 10Pay can make a deal with each other.
Ooh,
And they can say, oh, we're interoperable.
Bitcoin's up
We have a
14%.
bilateral
Wow.
bilateral agreements. So you can do that. But bilateral agreements don't scale, right? If everybody has to get a bilateral agreement with everybody else, it's a mess. It just doesn't work. And the beauty of an internet-type architecture is that scales. So networks of networks scale, and it means that one network does not have to have a connection to another network in order to send value. No more than, a port in Rotterdam has to have a bilateral agreement with, the Walmart in Denver to send goods. It just shows up as the same shipping container, right? So shipping containers created interoperability, the internet created interoperability of data, and that's what's happening here. So that we can now take multiple hops, and you can get value in any networks without bilateral agreements. This is, by the way, why bilateral agreements in trade are not as good as trade agreements, right? So we're going backwards in some ways, but we got to move forward in others. So, but this is very important. And by the way, that first thing we mentioned about the process going from sequential to coordinated, you can't do multiple hops in a sequential system. So all these things are very necessary if we're going to get an internet of value. Okay, and then what does that mean at the end of the day? That means the fixed costs of value transfer are going to what happened with data, and that is created the fundamental change. Once that happens, now that hundredth of a penny device transaction is profitable to a bank or maybe to a new fintech startup. And what do you get? You get the same Cambrian explosion of new startups that you saw with the internet. I think that is exactly what's going to happen in the fintech world once you get this structure in place, and that is happening right now. So a very exciting time. We're encouraging to see so many people involved in fintech here. You guys can have a huge impact on how this plays out. I think your timing is great. So that's all I had as far as what I wanted to talk about. I'm of course happy to open up for any questions anybody might have. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. And as usual, please use the microphone if you have a question. I know there are plenty of questions in the room, so go for it. Please. Yeah.
5 minute?
What are some of the regulatory hurdles to achieving an interoperable network across borders, and how have you overcome that so far, and how do you continue to overcome that?
Yeah, so great question. And so, again, the Internet of Value is going to be so different from the first internet because you're going to have three really different domains have to work together, right? Tech, capital, and compliance. And compliance just has an outsized influence when it comes to money. For obvious reasons, it's not going to change. It's just the reality. You sort of need to stop fighting that and just say that's just the way it is. But I think there's a lot of good news there. Throughout the world, fintech generally and blockchain specifically has become, kind of very, very popular with policymakers. So we have a stream of policymakers coming from all over the world coming through our offices. So that's a very good dynamic. That's very different from 2 years ago. 2 years ago with the Mt. Gox collapse and some of the nonsense being spewed out by sort of libertarian Bitcoin fanatics, which was just not helpful at all. And thankfully, they've really come. Bitcoin community has done a great job of really adjusting. They've got lobbyists all over the world. They're well funded, much better. But you have to take it seriously. You've got to get good compliance people involved in your startups really early. I know it's a pain, it's expensive, but you just got to do it. I'd say get some connections to policymakers. Don't spend too much time in Washington. It could be a real sinkhole. You can get in that trap as well, where you're having a lot of meetings and your competitors are getting ahead of you because you spend too much time in Washington, or Luxembourg, or Singapore, or Tokyo. Those are kind of the big fintech centers that are developing. There's a couple of things we would say have to happen. One, it would be nice if the administration, whatever administration, puts fintech on their top 15 things to think about. We didn't have that in the Obama administration, unfortunately. Hopefully we get that.
Dude, Bitcoin is
And what would be helpful is to get a sort of Clinton-like
going nuts. On a daily,
sort of a turning point in the internet.
it was 14%.
Something called the Global Framework.
Now it's 20%.
And I think that was the turning point from the internet looking like
This is gonna
a
get
very bad thing to that's a
crazy.
good thing. It just set a framework that all the other regulators should follow. There was another one
The
like
past 4 hours.
It was also helpful in Europe. We need that. There would be an argument also, not to get too much in the weeds, but when you go node to node,
20% in the past 4 hours. Yo.
You don't have any problems with copyright law. It would be nice, I don't think you have a problem really with value, but it would be nice if you had some rulings that made that ironclad. So that, you're not a money transmitter, if you're just a node and a prototype hop network of network. That would be nice to have.
Please, you can just approach the microphone. Yeah.
I have actually a couple of questions. The first one is probably, so if I have you correct, ILP is to payments, but IP is to the internet. And how do you actually plan to get all the different players on the network to adopt that protocol? Because you end up getting to a point where you have fiber running, between, let's say, countries, but the banks are still running on copper cables. So how do you actually get them to buy into that and actually change their networks, which are giving them a lot of revenue at this point in time? So they're making a lot of money off it. What incentivizes them to change?
So the two questions there, I guess. There's a number of things we do as far as standard setting. So ILP is not something that we own, right? We've definitely contributed a ton to it. Some of our early team members actually came up with it. But it sits as a nonprofit, permissible license entity in Luxembourg. Luxembourg picked on purpose because seems to be the best jurisdiction for the Chinese, Germans, and the Americans. And there's kind of the key players, I think, in value transfer. Again, not to leave anybody off that list, but those would be the problem areas that somebody was really happy. So that's important. They're working with the W3C, some of the standard setting bodies. There's a IOP working group that's about 200 members, including a lot of different companies. So it feels like it's in a pretty good place, and a lot of good progress is being made now in adoption. But as far as what is the bank's motivation, I think the banks have understood that cross-border payments are broken. It's a broken system today. And if you look at, global commerce is increasing, obviously, like this. Correspondent banking, which is the way the old system was, SWIFT and correspondent banking is the way that the system works today. It's actually decreasing. So banks are pulling back from particularly exotic corridors where there's too much regulation.
Trying to find an old cell phone of mine. Oh well.
That's a great question. So SWIFT, I think, has some fundamental problems in the SWIFT. I don't know if you know what SWIFT is, but it's sort of it's a bank-owned entity, and it is sort of the way that banks message each other with payments. The really important thing about SWIFT is, though, it's only the messaging layer. It's not the actual settlement layer. That's one problem. So it's kind of a decoupled process, which is a problem. The other problem is it's a closed network. So nobody knows nobody can see how it works, right? So we would argue that open source systems like ILP and like most of blockchain is open source are going to be more durable systems because they're open source. They're being attacked all the time. Bitcoin's being attacked all the time.
XRP's going
Bitcoin
nuts.
XRP or Ripple's consensus ledger is not broken. So they're being attacked all the time. I think that's a good thing. The thing about ILP that's important is it's more analogous to that shipping container. Right, so if you're a sender and a receiver, your shipping container has nothing to do with somebody else's shipping container. That's really important, right? If you're on a network or a ledger, anybody who goes on that ledger affects everybody else who's on that ledger because it's a network. ILP does not hold state, right? So it's not a database, doesn't hold state. It's only relevant to the sender and the receiver who now form almost like a temporary blockchain. So that's private to those two parties. So it's not sort of out in the wilderness, if you will.
About 13%.
Does that make sense? Because each ledger who's receiving it is still doing all their usual checks. If you're a weak network who's ILP enabled, you're still weak. If you're a strong network, you're fine. So all you're really trying to do there is allow those networks to exchange value.
What? Dude.
Well, it solves the problem.
This is getting nuts. Look at this.
Just being a closed system. Right, this is now an open system, and there's obviously scalability issues that could get bad. An ILP has infinite scalability. It's more analogous to a shipping container. One shipping container has nothing to do with another shipping container.
What am I on?
It gets really weird really quickly. There's a bunch of white papers, by the way, on ILP.
Oh, that's why. So I'm on Poloniex.
That might be helpful there.
On my computer.
I'll ask one if I
let me see if I can do this.
You'll have to use that one. The institutions like the Bank for International Settlements, right? They spend a lot of time thinking about settlement risk and trying to contain it. Could institutions like that be helpful to you in helping adoption happen faster?
Yes, could be. We've met with them.
It's probably because it's calculated.
The policy arm. So as far as standard settings, yes. So definitely we are cognizant that central banks will play a role. You're seeing a lot of really cool things coming out of the Bank of England. The Bank of Japan now has gotten I think Japan is really leading ahead as far as innovation in this category. Fed has actually been pretty constructive. They have a lot of people working on
About
where this
15%
technology is.
total.
So there's a lot of these international bodies and central
Yikes.
banks that are part of the mix, which I think just from a credibility standpoint, it kind of gives it a little bit of a seal of approval. It's not like you have separate regulators, enforcement people, but it helps. It helps get the banks comfortable and then the tech companies comfortable.
Huh.
Again, great to be here. I know we don't have a lot of time, so what I thought I would do, talk briefly about what Ripple is and what Ripple does and kind of what our mission is.
What it
Then we'll
does,
step
it's
back a
doing it
little
right
bit
now.
and give you a little bit of perspective on kind of what we see this blockchain revolution
Look at
really
that.
representing, what we think the big thing is that we're trying to pay attention to and how it's going to change the world. And then I'll talk briefly about the core technologies that we're betting on, given that vision that we see kind of before us. So first of all, Ripple is one of the first blockchain companies. We're about 240 employees, headquartered in San Francisco, which many of you know is a city about 3 hours north of here, maybe 4 hours. Okay, sometimes that gets a laugh. We have 8 offices throughout the world, and we're growing very rapidly. We're really focused on the enterprise applications of blockchain technology and blockchain derivative technologies, specifically for cross-border payments. We think everything starts with a payment, so a lot of the use cases that we're talking about, we think they really need to have a payments solution first, and then we can really kind of grow from there. And we're really focused on how this technology can solve problems. With cross-border payments is clearly a problem, and I think that's why we've been successful with over 100 announced production deals with enterprise companies throughout the world, and that continues to grow. So we had a record Q2, and we're just incredibly excited about the adoption that we're seeing. I should point out that these are not innovation lab deals. These are not experiments. These are full production deals where those teams had to evaluate whether or not this was going to increase my bottom line and is going to really improve the way I do business, and that's a lot harder to do. So we're really pleased with that. And again, the problem that we're trying to solve is, cross-border payments in the world they're antiquated, right? They're built on 1970s technology that just doesn't work in today's world. It's incredible that it takes, 3 to 5 days to move value across the world today. You could literally put cash in a FedEx envelope, mail it, to where you're trying to get to. It would be perfectly it would get there way faster. That's kind of crazy. The costs of cross-border payments are just unacceptably high, not just the fees that banks and their customers have to pay to correspondents and lifting fees, but all the capital that's tied up in the global system. Because payments are so slow, capital is just sitting there, and it's incredibly wasteful. And then most shocking of all is the failure rates of cross-border payments today. About 6% of cross-border payments fail. We're talking 1/9 of reliability. I mean, can you imagine if 6% of all your Google searches failed? We wouldn't have an internet as we know it today. So this is just unacceptable in 2018, and it's got to change. So what we have done at Ripple is we've built something called RippleNet. That's really a combination of 3 core products, which I'll talk about one of them in a little bit, but just the combination of those products, RippleNet allows enterprises, payment companies, remittance companies to enjoy, on-demand, real-time payments in seconds, incredibly low cost, with, very importantly, no possibility for failures. There's atomic transactions. They can't fail in the middle. There's no settlement risk. And that gives their customers a much better experience. So the banks and their customers, they know in today's world they've got to be lightning fast, and this is really allows them to do that. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. That's a little bit about the company. Let me step back and talk a little bit about what we see this blockchain revolution really representing. Obviously, there is this is the most hyped area in technology today. This is the most attention fintech has ever gotten, right? It's the first time fintech has been truly global. So, clearly there's a lot of overhype. There's a lot of projects that are going to fail. I think we already know cryptocurrencies are not going to replace all fiat currencies, but they're going to be supplemental. We're not going to be buying our avocados, on IBM's blockchain, right? But it may improve some things, right? And we're not going to tokenize everything, right? We're going to tokenize things where it solves a problem, but not everything's going to be tokenized. So clearly there's a lot of hype, but you got to admit, something fundamental is happening here. I think we all feel that in our bones, right? There's something very big. You're not going to have this much money, this much talent globally that's going into this space unless something really fundamental is afoot. And the way we see it is we think this really represents the final step in globalization. And I think we all know globalization has not been very popular lately. At the same time, I think we all know there's no future for our world unless we're more global, we're more interoperating more on an international basis. We've got to fix some things. Globalization is not a bad thing. We would just say it's an incomplete thing, right? It's a work in progress. And we kind of use the example of, you can't have fire without fuel, oxygen, and heat. And we think you can't have globalization that works without a global system in three key things: data, goods, and money. And the truth is we only have that today in two of those things: data and goods. We don't have it in money. So globalization is kind of a lot of potential, but it's not really delivering yet on what it could do. We've got to complete this picture. And if you think about it, these other two things, they're fairly recent as well. Data and goods, we didn't always have a global system of data and goods. And think about how, I love talking about shipping containers, so let me talk about shipping containers. Think about how shipping goods was before the invention of the shipping container. Incredibly inefficient, incredibly labor intensive, huge bottleneck for the world. The dock workers could go on strike, everything shuts down. Goods would have to come into a port, they'd have to be unpacked and repacked, shipped out a completely different way. It was a mess, and this was clearly holding back the world. And then along comes this super simple technology, the shipping container, just a metal box, and boom, suddenly every port in the world, every city is interoperable to every other city. Every ship interoperates with every train and every truck, every warehouse. Totally changed the way the world works. By the way, it costs now 4 cents to move a shirt all the way across the world from, say, Vietnam, China to the U.S., 4 cents. That's incredible. And importantly, this was not because of the invention of a new shipping company. It was the invention of a simple standard, a simple box, a simple technology that everybody could use, that was endlessly scalable, and that was simple enough for people to agree on. It led to completely different shipping companies that the world has never seen before, and it led to a complete transformation of ports and the way cities operated, mostly run by robots, not by people. So it changed everything, about a 700% increase since the 1950s in global trade because of it. That's a huge win. We all know what happened with data. Sometime after the shipping container, along comes another standard, IP. Before that, of course, we had a world of different networks that didn't interoperate with each other. It was hard to communicate.
And we are live, and guys, there is a freaking breakout going on right now in the middle of the freaking night. It was beautiful. I just watched Bitcoin on BitMEX go from 4180 to 46 freaking hundred in the span of maybe 15 minutes. XRP now at 5% as well. Look at that, dude. Look at that. That is just quite simply beautiful. Bitcoin just broke a very crucial level. Alexa, turn on the lights. Hang on, let me go ahead and get the freaking 7-color fade going. 4673 right now. Oh my gosh. It's happening, boys. It is happening. Oh my gosh. This is crazy, dude. Bitcoin just broke a seriously freaking critical level on technical analysis, man. It broke a very, very critical level. It literally went past 4180 for a little bit and just freaking rocket just left, dude. Crazy, guys. And XRP following as well pretty decently. So we're just going to keep watching Bitcoin because we know when Bitcoin... It might hit 5,000 tonight. It might hit 5,000 tonight.
Oh, dude, it did. That's great.
There we go. Let's turn down the speed a bit.
That's great.
All right, there we go. That's good. Yeah, guys, holy crap. Massive, massive breakout, guys. 4,700! 4,700, guys! Guys, is the bear market over?
Yo.
Do you see that? My friends, that is called a freaking breakout.
What?
That is called a breakout, my friends. This is amazing.
My friends.
XRP falling as well, up 6% right now, dude. Freaking awesome. Bull run time, dude.
It's
Holy
about
crap.
time.
Holy moly, 40, almost 4,800, guys. We're hitting 5K. If we break 5K, guys, it's bull market confirmed. Because like 4,250, that was the crucial level we needed to break. But oh my gosh. Oh my freaking gosh. XRP Isaac 589, thank you so much, man, for the $10 contribution. Finally, hell yes, I am right on with you, brother. I know Bitcoin's moving like a lot more than XRP is, but trust me, when Bitcoin rallies like crazy, it brings so much. Didn't I not just tweet, I'm feeling bullish? Did I not just tweet that? Oh my gosh, I literally tweet, oh my god, 4770. It's happening, boys. It's happening, boys. Well, let me pull up this tweet right now. Just randomly tweeted 22 hours ago. I said I was feeling bullish, man. Holy crap. It's go 48.25 on the contracts. Oh my gosh. It's happening, guys. 48.50? This is breakout time right now. Oh my gosh. Dude, do you know how fast this is going to spread through the fucking media? Oh my gosh. Sorry for swearing, but this is just very, very exciting, guys. I just watched Bitcoin
this is
freaking $700 in like 10 minutes, dude. Oh my gosh. Take that, Rob Art. Jungle knows. Oh yeah, I wonder what Rob Art's thinking right now. Okay, XRP up 7%, boys. 7%. Oh my god, just clicked kind of hard though. It just hit 35 cents though. Oh my gosh. Ooh, baby. Oh, baby. Let's not get too excited yet, for we all know it might be some error. I don't think this is an error, man. This is across all exchanges. Let's check out CMC. Dude, CMC is like lagging behind on the price. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, boys. Yes. This is amazing. I love these kinds of
Let's see if Bloomberg has anything.
Thank you so much, TY Realist, for the 5, man.
I don't remember
You're amazing, dude. Thank you so much. Thank you both, Jungle.
what channel it's on.
Oh my gosh. See, I don't know if it's going to keep going further now, though, because that's where it's like, I could feel like now that we pumped so much, we might have some shorts start to come in. But look at the sell walls. Look at how thin the sell walls are, guys.
Crap.
Look at the freaking, compared to this. The sell walls are minuscule. There's nothing there. There's like nothing at the sell walls right now. Oh, now it's freaking a bunch of them just poured in.
Hold on a
Let's see.
second. Sorry, I got lost in my Blockfolio app. Doesn't make any sense.
The switch is on. I don't know if you mean the X Rapid switch, but I definitely feel like we're getting a change in sentiment in the market. Oh my gosh. The sell walls practically don't exist. Oh man. And if Bitcoin could dump and that money goes into XRP, that would be even better. Oh my gosh. Holy crap. That was amazing. I was playing CSGO. I was playing competitive. I left the comp match for this. And I was just playing. All of a sudden, just kept freaking rising and rising and rising, and it would not stop, dude. I wonder if we might hit 5K tonight. Because you know freaking every single trader's notifications are going off like crazy right now. Right? Man, dude. Man. That is freaking... Bitcoin just pumped freaking 13% in like no time, dude. Now, it seems like we're going down a bit, but let's just see how this plays out. Let's see how this plays out. Yeah, true. Yeah, you know, oh, lost the chat. My bad. Hang on. There we go. But yeah, people, they will just be bearish, you know, just because you kind of sound smart when you're bearish. Because that way, like, you know, best case scenario, like, you know, one case scenario you're right, other case scenario you're wrong, but the price is up, so no one really cares anyways. Okay. 4,700. Now, are we gonna take a breather and consolidate. But XRP is still up 6%. It's actually pretty good. You know, it's actually not too bad. It wicked so hard though, man. It wicked so hard. I don't know, I feel like the pump may be over. But I don't know, because when we got to 44, we're nearing 4,500, it did the same thing. It stayed there for a couple of minutes and all of a sudden just kept freaking barreling through the sell wall. Yeah, if it's 5K, man, we broke a very, very crucial level. We broke a very crucial level.
It did, but let's see, how long did it do it for?
Yeah, this is getting good. This is getting good. Just got here by the massive jump, dude. Literally, I'm pretty
It closed
positive
above
that it's
it
just
for
because,
1, 2, 3
it's
minutes.
just because it broke a critical level. That's like literally all that happened. It just broke a critical level. I'm showing 4480. Yeah, CMC and the other price watching sites, I don't think they've caught up quite yet. But now we're back in the high 4600 range. Let's see what happens from here. I feel like now people are really trying to short, but at the same time, you never know. It could keep going. Yeah, LXP is at 33 cents now. It's better. Yeah, you could definitely trade if you're level-headed. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What do you think about XRP pumping before the rest of the thing? It was up about 1.5%.
Alright, I gotta go to sleep.
Alright, back to 4,700 on the contracts.
Good night. Probably put this up tomorrow,
Curious
who
to see if
knows.
the market